Relationships don't mean you're not going to have disagreements. We're always going to have disagreements. That's the nature of the game. But at the nature of the game, there's got to be a respect level of when there is a disagreement on either side that we have to stop, listen, and understand what the right answer is. If you can get that relationship strong with your counterparts, you'll have a successful project.
Welcome to $1 Billion Projects, the only podcast sharing lessons from thought leaders who work in mining, oil and gas, and all other industrial verticals, where the projects have budgets in the millions and sometimes billions of dollars. I'm Wes Sessenwein, founder and CEO of PayShepherd, and I'll be your host as we explore insights and challenges from the projects that we consider to be the backbone of our economy. Now let's get started. Thanks, everybody, for joining. I'd like to welcome Mark. Mark, I'm proud to have you on the show today. And Mark, if you can go ahead and introduce your name, your role, and a little bit about your background, which I find incredibly interesting, that'd be great.
Very Wes, and thanks for having me, Wes. We'll try to treat this sort of informally and have a conversation, I guess. So I'm Mark Nagus. I'm fortunate enough I work as a construction manager in labor relations at Bruce Power. Been with Bruce Power now 16 years, I guess, as construction manager and a maintenance manager in our stations before that. Previously, I actually moved from Western Canada, where I worked I was a manager with Weyerhaeuser in a small OSB mill in Hudson Bay, Saskatchewan. And then previous to that, I worked in TransCanada and contracted before that a number of years. So been sort of in industry for about a long time. I'll leave it at that, say 35 years or longer. As background, I'm a tradesman by background. I have many years ago I took an instrumentation technology diploma. The school's changed names 2 or 3 times. It was called Saskatchewan Technical Institute at that time in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, and then proceeded to get my instrument mechanic ticket out of NAIT in Alberta, and then also my journeyman electrician out of Alberta as well later on in years. But I've been very fortunate. I've worked in industry and in the trades and in the field for my whole career. And Wes, I can't say enough about the companies I worked for, both Nova, TransCanada before, Weyerhaeuser, and Bruce Power. I've been very, very fortunate. They're very strong organizations. They treated me well. They treat our people well. It's been a pleasure, actually.
That's awesome. So if you think about some of the projects that operations that you worked on in Western Canada and then migrating east to Bruce Power, how would you describe the difference in scale and complexity? And I know that's just wide area of topics you could cover there.
Scale and complexity. So I'll see if I can say it this way. Well, first of all, very different industries. Oil and gas, primarily in Alberta, very much driven results and capital based in those days. And this is a long time ago for me now. It wasn't unheard of that the owners, aka the oil companies that were doing construction projects at the time, a lot of it was field based. So they had strict timelines. There was no lack of go, and they wanted those wells producing and that return on profit within days, weeks, months at the most, right? They were very, very production. And the oil industry has historically been that and has been extremely efficient at building that productivity part. When I moved back to Saskatchewan in, I guess it was 2000 with Weyerhaeuser, and I sort of went back to nearby my home, where not far from where I grew up. And Weyerhaeuser, we were building a new oriented strand board mill, and very different industry again. A lot of big moving equipment there. It's a lot of conveyors, induced draft fans that move things, log ladders. It's a little, what I call, it's different than an oil and gas sector, which is a lot more of a rotating equipment, very pumps, compressors, and in the wood industry, it's very much a lot more mechanical or heavy mechanical, a lot of drives, electric drives. It was a real good experience. I'll tell you, The amount of iron and steel and work that goes into those mills is crazy. A lot of horsepower there that has to move a lot of equipment, and the maintenance that takes on the maintainers there are absolutely exceptional at what they do. I think of some of the millwrights; they know how to tune those, and they're always adjusting drives, chains, belts all the time. Things wear immensely, and from the dust and the dirt, it's a totally different environment. I would say between the oil and gas and the wood industry, oil and gas is very much a very clean industry in a lot of cases, right? Like your plants are kept clean, and they're very much dominated by a lot of hazards like sour gas and oil and some of the things that come with that. When I went to the wood industry, it's a lot more a lot of industrial safety. It has a lot of heavy equipment, a lot of moving parts to it, very different hazards. They still have some explosive hazards around dust, and they have some, seriousness in certain systems, but a very different game with their heat and their hot oil. It's a different system, but every bit as dangerous and really, um, for lack of a better term, it takes a lot of technology to move some of that stuff around. And I think back to some of the techs that were working on our plant at the time, when you got a massive press that's pressing board, and it has to take a big mat of strands and squeeze it to within millimeters every time consistently. The amount of work that it takes to tune that equipment and get it working in that size is really quite a feat, and they do well there. So, and then it wasn't planned. We just ended up moving out here to Bruce Power, and now I'm in the nuclear sector for the last 16 years. And again, a whole different set of hazards, a whole different set of different workforce. Um, I would think one of the things that nuclear has been really, really, I'm really impressed with on the nuclear side is the ability to share knowledge. A lot of the oil and gas and a lot of the wood products industry, especially, are very competitive. They're down to pennies. They can't let out that information. They're very, very tight with it. On the nuclear side, because of some of the various incidents that have happened over the world over the years, we're very proud about sharing our event histories and understanding. So we continuously learn from each other all the time. So if there's a problem at a plant in another country, even, we'll learn the operating experience from them to try to make our own improvements here. So the sharing of knowledge and the sharing of information is exceptional. And I'd say the other thing about it is very much like an airline industry. We can't do anything but continuously improve because we never want an incident ever. So it's that diligence and that expertise that we train our folks in, and we continue to drive improvement and that change in our people is really world class. I mean, if you think on the airline industry, you can't have planes crash, right? So you can't have 99% is not acceptable. It has to be right all the time, and it's the same in the nuclear industry. So that's why that's that continuous learning. So I think if you said the difference, I think the difference is based on the risk that we look at from where the industry stands, from both people and public.
I'm really curious in terms of sharing knowledge. That's I didn't know that. And to when the rubber meets the road, or in application, how does that communication happen?
Well, we belong to some very good organizations, IMPO and WANO, the World Association of Nuclear Operations, that we have memberships. Everybody in a nuclear power plant has memberships in those organizations. So we share that data. They do that analysis, and they do independent reviews on us to make sure that we're meeting the standards of what the best looks like. So it's always raising the bar, and we're always having to meet that. And when we have issues or incidents, we share that. For us, because we're a can-do organization, which is Canadian Nuclear, and we have our own. We have um, anyone with can-do reactors actually has COG, or the can-do operators group, and they actually collect all that are specific to our technology, I'll say, and then we share them amongst those groups. So there's some in Argentina, I believe South Korea. I don't know all the names, but there's, I think, about 17 or 18 different versions out there around the world.
Mark, whether you're in Western Canada putting pipe in the ground, or building well sites, or working on strand board press in Central Canada, or working on a refurb or construction of a nuclear power plant in Ontario, what are the common threads that you've seen throughout your career in terms of effective work management and execution of capital projects?
I know I'm going to get into specifics. I'm going to say it this way. Like really in your construction area, there's the three key threads, right? You've got to have safety, your quality, and your productivity. And they all link together. There used to be a time when I think people said, "Oh, productivity, you can't step into the safety realm, etc." I'm really happy to see that finally people have sort of proven that's not true. You have to have your safety as your first and only value all the time, and it's proven time and time again by numerous people much smarter than myself that when you have a safe site, that you do your work to the quality standard expected, that your productivity will go along with it, and that they're so intertwined that to be successful, and I don't think it makes a difference in industry. I really don't. It means that a worker not only feels physically safe but mentally stable and safe as well. They have to be, fit and want to do that job. So when they come to work and they have that understanding and knowledge that, hey, I'm not only going to be physically safe today, but mentally I'm stable and ready to go to work, and that it's expected I do my work at a high quality, that they'll increase their productivity by doing that, and then you help them through the various technical means that we have. I mean, we manage our schedules, of course, tighter than we ever used to. It used to be, lack of a better term, when I first started out, there were guys had stuff written on the back of cigarette packages in those days, right? It's so much better now than it's ever been, and it's not just the tools, but it's the communication that comes with it that says, hey, this is what's coming. This is where you can see you're going. And you share that right down to the group on the floor. They're all professionals. We're all professionals. So everybody wants the same thing. Everybody wants to be on a winning team. And to be on a winning team, you want to be safe. You want to build it to the high standard, and you want to be productive. And when you can get that congruency across all your organizations, that's what works. And it doesn't matter what industry. And I mean, that's pretty high level, and it sounds, what would you get up in the clouds? But it comes right down to that, and it's, including everybody right from the floor up.
So when you talk about, I think you said psychological safety. Did you
Yeah.
use the word? Did you say psychological safety?
Yeah, I said mental safety, I think.
Mental safety. So
Right?
what's an example of how you can enable that for the workforce?
From a leader standpoint, whether you're the first line manager or the four person on the floor, right up to, a superintendent level or higher, I think the first thing you have to have is an open door, in the sense that you can't have somebody walking in your door every day, but you have to have an open door policy that says if there's something going on that individual doesn't feel comfortable, they have to have the ability to communicate that to someone when they need help. And it's as simple as, some days the briefing at the morning of the start didn't go well. And everybody's a little disjointed, and they need to have the ability to say, well, we need to just stop for a minute, 2 minutes, whatever it is, and reset. Because otherwise, then you'd start gaining your risk. You start getting in the risk of somebody getting hurt, or somebody makes a mistake and your quality goes away, which then now you're doing rework, which causes your whole productivity. So, your question around how do you get that? You build it by having that trust with the workforce that says we have to be able to communicate when there is a problem and not hide it, whether it's with myself, with my peer, with the work that we're doing, or something we discovered. Because a lot of construction projects don't always go quite as planned on the paper, and you need that workforce to know when there's something not right, even if it's just a gut check.
I love that. How do you enable that when it's a contracted workforce working for a contractor, and where does that responsibility, where does that opportunity responsibility sit and get shared between owner and contractor?
Well, and that's that's tough, because what you want to try to do is stay out of the commercial aspect and stay with the people aspect. And it gets tough when you try to drag in the commercial aspect of what really is a people business, right? Um, uh, Let me say this. First of all, you have to have a relationship with your contractor, whoever that is, whether you're the owner or the contractor. You have to have a regular relationship with them. So whether it's a regular cadence call once a week, once a month, and it has to occur at all different levels, right? It can't just occur at the workforce level. It can't just occur at the VP level. It has to sort of occur on a regular basis amongst the group. And I don't mean it doesn't have to bog down with a bunch of people with meetings. I don't mean that at all. I mean, you have to have a working relationship where you can build that trust of knowing what it is. And I'll step back from there and say, when you get into that, you really need to set down the clear accountability lines. It really is. You said responsibility. I'll say the responsibility is everyone's responsible, but the accountability is where you make your lines in the sand and say, hey, this is yours, this is ours. Having said that, if we ever see one or the other straying off those lines, then we need to have a conversation about it. And it doesn't have to, once you start learning where your, lack of a better term, your swim lane is in your pool, stay in your swim lane, because that's the shortest distance to the end. But you're all swimming in the same pool, so you want to make sure that the water quality is good, I guess, right? I don't know. That was maybe a bad analogy.
No, you probably know this about me, but I think the relationships that exist between owner workforce, contractor workforce are all incredibly important to to shared outcomes, right?
And remember this, and Wes, you'll know this, but just because relationships don't mean they're not going to have disagreements. We're always going to have disagreements. That's the nature of the game. But at the nature of the game, there's got to be a respect level of when there is a disagreement on either side, that we have to stop, listen, and understand what the right answer is. If you can get that relationship strong with your counterparts, you'll have a successful project. And it's the same with your workforce, and I mean that sincerely. So when I've been fortunate, I worked in different organizations, and I worked non-union and union, and and you have to have a strong working relationship with your union partners as well in unionized settings, because they're your workforce. They're the ones that are going to help you get success. So you need to have the time and make the time to spend with them to make sure that you're aligned in the ultimate goals. You know, it's it's hard work sometimes, because people will argue that you don't have the same goals, but actually you do, right? Like, you start a project, everybody wants to come in, work safe, perform a good job, and be productive. So just set it up that way.
Genuinely here, how much of it at the core is about the success of the worker at the end of the day, the person on the tools executing the work?
It's so much the success of the worker, and the core of it. It's I don't know. There's no right or wrong number there, but they have to feel that they're adding value, that they're on a winning team, because everybody wants to be a winner, and therefore, if you can help them do what they do best, which maybe in the cases for me is a lot of times the trades, enable it so the trades can get to work efficiently, that they know that they're always safe working at it, and get right down into the nuts and bolts. Have they got their work protection? Are they capable? Do they have their tools? Do they have everything they need? The training that they need to have. That's the core. If you can get that stuff in hand, a good project sort of fixes itself as it goes. Because everybody's smart in these projects. You take you take an engineer. An engineer is very good at engineering and designing things. But a tradesperson will look at the engineering drawing and say, well, that's pretty good, but there's a few gaps here, but we can help you get around that by doing this and this and this, because the tradesperson's actually done the work, right? So it's everything.
Yeah, that lands for me. So when I feel like all the headlines that I see are, hey, there's going to be a massive shortage of qualified trades over the next, X amount of years, well into the future. And when you're executing on a, 10 plus year long project, there's real consideration there. So, how do you best support the trades to make sure that there's qualified, super talented, engaged folks for decades to come? What are some of the things that you can contribute, or you and Bruce Power?
All right. Well, I'm going to talk sort of in a unionized setting here. So the first thing we do is we do set up regular meetings with our chief stewards on site and our stewards. They represent the workforce. They're the ones that are going to hear. So we have to have a working relationship where there's issues that are happening out there that are impacting the workforce, especially the numbers that we're talking, which aren't tens, they're hundreds of thousands, right? So you have to have that. And then at another level, you need to have a real line of sight working with the business agent who has the same job as we do, except they run a people business of dispatching people. So they have to make sure that they've got what they need. And there may be things where you have to recognize that they're also looking after more than just you. They have several clients that they're looking after. So maybe a business manager's running a hall with 2,000 workers at it. Well, you're only employing maybe 220 of them or something like that. So that individual, he or she has another 1,800 people to look after and make sure that they have work and that they're getting looked after accordingly. So you have to work with them. And what we try to do is we try to offer, and you got to be careful. Again, the lines of accountability there, some of it's theirs, some of it's ours. But if we can help with working with them on training programs where they have a shortfall of a key skill that we can come with, then part of the duty of the employer is to make sure that the person's competent and capable of what they're working there too. So we've got to make sure that our training programs align with the skills that they have and what they're delivering for people. So I don't want to call it a handshake deal because it's not. But it takes a handshake to actually make sure the deal is done. If that makes sense, right? And so you have to work on that. And you again got to have regular calls, and you have to make sure because their world changes as fast as ours. And one day maybe they've got an out of work list, a big project, especially in Ontario these days. They come up with a big new battery plant somewhere. Well, now the agent is trying to scramble to figure out how he's going to supply X amount of workers to that project, right? And without or lessening the impact on somebody else, because to them their longevity is just as important. So you work with them to within the confines of the collective agreement, and then outside that of how you're going to support the longevity of the business for both sides. And we don't talk about it a lot, but we have to be cognizant of where you live, and really your workforce should represent your community. So you need to include your Indigenous relations folks, and if you have some Indigenous areas that need to be focused on, you work with your unions and the Indigenous communities to make sure that you've got the right representation. Because I'm a firm believer, if you live and it doesn't matter what geographic area, that hopefully the primary workforce that lives and works there represents the community that lives there. So that's you gotta just spend the time. And it's not easy, right?
Why is that so important, Mark?
Well, I'm just going to say it's the right thing to do. But in order to be successful in business, you need all the players playing together. And in the days of fighting about it all the time, it's got to go away. You have to have all the cogs in the wheel turning the same way. And like I said, there's going to be rub points and differences, but you need to have everybody aligned with the same way if you want to be fully successful. But if I looked at a business level, like margins are tight, you're competing with other entities in the world. Time is sped up; it actually hasn't slowed down. You're going to see a lot of competitiveness. So to be competitive means you need to be actually maybe a little less competitive with everybody else, but a little more open at trying to drive your business together. I don't know if I answered your question.
You did. You nailed it. Yeah, that's perspective that I wanted to hear. Okay, we've got a healthy amount of contractors, SMB business owners that listen. And one thing I'm interested in your perspective on is, as you've worked with hundreds, if not thousands, of different contracting organizations, varying sizes and scopes, what are some of the common characteristics when you look across them that make you say, hey, that is a great partner for our business?
When they have a workforce and they have a leadership in their workforce that stands up and says, we ran into a problem. This one's ours. We ran into a problem, but we can't go forward. We need your help. Meaning maybe it's ours, right? I mean, maybe they went onto a piece of property that they're doing a dig for you, and they found something that's your property. If you were the owner, they did the scans, if they did the process that we asked them to do, then we have to work with them to understand, right? What we really need to do is just when there's a problem or an issue, communicate it with us and work together. Um, so I, it's understanding what's theirs and what's ours in those lines of accountability, and then understanding how you can support one another so that you can stay in your lines of accountability and get to your end result.
So swim lanes, accountability, clear, kind of directly responsible individuals seems to be an important theme here. There's always gray area and fringe cases, and this is where the relationship likely comes into play. How do you navigate those gray areas together to get to like a shared common outcome that just works?
It depends. It depends on who you're working with, who you know, and let's be clear, we don't always get along, right? So sometimes there's got to be a different play or a different person. Like how do you navigate it? I first pick up the phone is first thing. Like, I mean, maybe I'm old here and nobody else does, but I still like to pick up the phone and talk to somebody and know who you're going to talk to and have a conversation. It doesn't always have to be official. It can be a discussion. Like the fella I've worked for over the number of years always said, actually, we're really in the people business. So if you can think about that, you're building a widget, you're building something, but you're really in the people business. So if you're going to build that thing, you got to know how to work with the people that are going to build it, and that can change. Like if anybody's been around in other cultures, um, how you interact in those cultures may be different too, right? So you pretty much got to know the group you're working with, what you expect from them. Yeah, I talked about accountabilities, but also know who they are. But, a lot of companies have a reputation already that precedes them, and many times the companies that are successful, it's because they've got a great working relationship with their owners.
I reputation is everything, and protecting that reputation is super important. And so that often shows up on the day to day. So thanks for sharing that, Mark. As you look out into the future and the importance of qualified, talented trades, what would you share with those who are maybe early in their career, just out of high school or in college, thinking about going into the trades? What would you share with them to help them decide if that's the right decision for them?
Well, there's no wrong decision. Let's be clear. Um, if you're, if you're 20 something and you've chosen a path and it doesn't work out, don't lament. Working out doesn't mean you didn't learn anything. Doesn't mean you can't use skills you've learned. Doesn't mean you can't change. First thing, how many? And I'll use this example. How many young people go off to university, start university, and after 6 months, a year, or 2 years, totally change their path because they're learning that it wasn't quite what they expected, or it's just not a fit. You got to remember, it's not stale or stagnant. Everything changes. From a trades perspective, I'd say been highly undervalued over the last 20 to 30 years. And we're finally waking up as a country and as maybe even larger than that, but how important trades are. And it's sort of been branded as a lesser thing, but you can't move in this country without a plumber, without an electrician, without an ironworker building steel, the carpenters building houses. If you look at, Southern Ontario, there's probably I don't know how many small towns are redoing all their infrastructure on their, horizontal construction in their streets and sewer mains. And Leona is a very large labor organization, is doing a ton of that. So the opportunity is extensive, and you can start there and work your way through it. And if you can get in that and you like doing that for a while, it doesn't mean you're stuck there. I mean, lots of them move on to supervision, some move on to other businesses. It's a good opportunity. And so two things I'd say: never stop learning. You just got to keep trying to get better at whatever it is. And if you get into it and it doesn't work, don't be scared to try something different. You'll figure it out if you got the right mental model. And the second thing is the opportunity is now. Get out there, find it. There's work. We've got a housing shortage in this country, so there's lots of room to build houses or structures, right? We've got industrial work going on in I don't want to call it the electrical revolution, but and that's going to change, right? If you haven't noticed, some of our roads aren't always in good condition. So there's always road work to do, and there's always maintenance of things to do. And frankly, as a country, Canada has nothing but opportunity with it. We've got mines in the north that still have still to come. It's just there's lots to do. You got to get yourself out there, and don't. I said so. I think the first one is continuous learning, and second one, don't limit yourself. Right.
Agreed. Mark, I've got two questions left for you, and one of them is, you've had such an incredible career to date, and you've clearly got opinions and perspectives on a variety of areas. Is there something that I should have asked you today that I didn't? Anything you want to share on these topics?
Oh, well, first of all, these are just my opinions. We're just having a conversation here. If nobody has to take it for anything more than that, right? Wes, I don't think there's anything more to ask. It's the opportunities right now in Canada in industry is there, especially for folks that want to maybe get into trades, into project management. But I want to make it clear too, you still have to have a job and you still have to work. So it's not like there's no free path, right? You still have to be diligent. No different than if you go to university and get a degree. You still got to come out and you got to have some place to work. And we tend to think of education as once you get a degree or you get a ticket or you get that diploma, that you're done. All that did was give you the skills to try to move forward so you can progress your life in a positive manner. It's just a step. You just keep making steps.
I appreciate every conversation that we have, and you're a great communicator. So my last question for you is, I have to ask, the pictures behind you, what are they?
Oh, I didn't even look. Yeah. The top one there would be the turbine hall. That would be a picture of the turbine taken apart, because I just grabbed a little meeting room down here that's got the pictures on it. And that's Mercedes.
Yeah, a lot of history.
Yeah.
Mark, thank you very much for taking the time. I thoroughly enjoy this conversation, and I know that others will too. So I appreciate that.
No problems. And again, I enjoy having a conversation. I've got other things to get back to as well. But all the best to you, West, and take care.